benefited from periodic pickups in for instance, yogurt processing, for instance. Generally, this map every month is dark across upstate New York. There are some months when the entire upstate New York part of the map is dark or darker. And again, look at Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam. Very weak also. So these are things to keep in mind. The overwhelming majority of the growth in private sector employment in New York State and incomes has been in New York City. And that's related to the financial markets being propped up, although financial sector employment is down. And I'm going to get to that later in my presentation. And that is not coming back to what it was. But it's continued unbelievable strength almost in foreign tourism. I can't even explain it. Mildred was referring to Spain, places like the difficulties going on in Europe and the mass movements in Europe, in Spain and places like that, in Greece, to the economic distress. And that New York is packed with tourists from South America and Europe and has remained so. New York City, Manhattan, almost throughout, before, during, and after the recession. I'm not even sure how to completely explain it, frankly. But that's what's propping up New York City. A lot of the job growth in New York City is low-wage, unskilled jobs. So, here's unemployment. I haven't talked about unemployment. Unemployment is a different kind of number. When I talk about job growth, I'm talking about what's called the establishment data, which is firms that actually employ people and and is based on a survey of firms that's adjusted every year for actual records of who's paying unemployment insurance on how many people. And that's by location of the job. Unemployment data is based on a household survey and reflects employment by residents of the people responding to the survey. And there's an aspect of unemployment that's become more funky in recent years, because unemployment is, after all, has a numerator and a denominator. And the denominator is the labor force, how many people are available to work, and the numerator is how many people are working. And the difference is the unemployment rate. And you'll see the unemployment rate's been going down. It's now, in the US, it's 6.7. New York State is slightly above the national rate. New York City is high. We're going to get to this in a minute. And the rest of the state is relatively low. In fact, you may have heard this. One of the lines that now appears frequently in proclamations and statements from the governor and legislative leaders is, in the past year, the unemployment rate in upstate New York went down by a full percentage point, the largest drop in history. Well, that's true. It's also essentially meaningless. Here's why. As I noted, upstate's producing no jobs. Remember that chart a few charts ago about how this upstate has lost jobs and hasn't even recovered to its 2000 employment rate? However, upstate has never been above the national unemployment rate. In fact, the upstate has generally had a lower unemployment rate than the rest of the nation in the period preceding this, got a little bit higher, and then went down again. So upstate is the black line here. Note, for the most part, over this 14-year period, upstate has a lower unemployment rate than the US as a whole. Why? Large numbers of people don't hang around upstate New York assuming a job is going to turn up for them anymore. Also, the population's aging, which we'll also get to in a moment. So here's that same kind of map from the Labor Department with unemployment rates, and this time the effect is reversed. Basically, light is good. It's essentially the thing. Dark is bad, light is good. But note, upstate's not particularly dark. The unemployment rates in the southern tier and the western tier aren't bad. Flip side, Steuben, the county that had the job growth, has a somewhat higher unemployment rate. The unemployment rates are quite good in much of New York State. The darkest part of the map are places that are largely unpopulated or sparsely populated in northern New York. So what's going on? We'll get to that in a minute, but the main thing that's going on is that the labor force upstate is shrinking. That 1% decrease in unemployment that upstate has experienced in the past year, over half of that improvement in the unemployment rate was due to shrinkage in the labor force. There were fewer people looking for work, and therefore the unemployment rate went down. It was not due to a growth in people being employed, it was due to a decrease in the number of people who were available to be employed, which is an outgrowth of larger demographic factors. Now, This weakness in labor force growth and in total employment is reflected in, for instance, just to throw out another map I was able to grab quickly and put into the slideshow here. This is a map from a different source, from the State Comptroller's Office, of the annual growth in sales tax receipts by county. And on this map, light is very, very bad. White is you're declining by more than 3%. Dark green is very good. You've got tax growth of more than 6%. Notice the light shading in upstate New York. You've got all those counties that are white or pale green have declines year to year in sales tax revenue. And that's essentially a surrogate for retail activity. And remember, sales tax is driven very heavily by expensive goods, by automobiles, household goods, washers, dryers, carpets. This is another reflection of the flatness of the upstate economy now, and a good deal of that dark greenness in Long Island in particular is Sandy recovery. A well-known economic after effect of natural disasters is that when a storm comes and destroys much of a place, especially a built-up place, there is a surge of economic activity reflected in retail sales and employment as the place is rebuilt. That's what happened in Long Island. So it's not clear that that is a sustainable growth phase. In sum, you got to keep in mind this tale of two states. So private employment upstate is very weak, hasn't fully recovered from either of the last two recessions going back to 2001-03. Binghamton, Elmira, and Utica, Rome are really weak. Upstate's relative economic decline is related to a long-term loss of manufacturing jobs. I didn't get into that detail, but has anybody here heard the new buzz phrase, the manufacturing renaissance? Nationally, there's been a small growth in manufacturing jobs. That has not happened in upstate New York. Upstate New York has had a continuing loss of manufacturing jobs. Also, our failure to generate new employment opportunities in other sectors then has another effect. And that other effect is what I call the demographic economic feedback loop. There's less economic opportunity, therefore fewer young people stick around looking for jobs, therefore there's less of a market for people running businesses and creating jobs, therefore the decline continues. So, I think as David even mentioned in his opening remarks, the state lost 1.6 million residents between 2000 and 2010. By the way, New York State has been losing jobs up to 2010. New York State has been losing residents, this measure of net domestic migration, for 50 years, 50. The trend, the two biggest decades for the trend were the 1970s and then the 2000s. So, 1.6 million New Yorkers moved from New York to another state between 2000 and 2010. Our net population loss due to domestic migration was the most of any state as a percentage of population during the decade. The only state that had a larger total number was California. And our net migration loss increased to its highest level since the 1970s, as I said. Only 3 states lost a bigger share of population than New York, and Louisiana and Michigan were those 2 states. Where are New Yorkers going? Well, you might have guessed. So on this map, dark is your import of New Yorkers. And basically, New Yorkers go down the east coast of Florida and everywhere in between. And you see there's some gains by Texas, also by California. Texas, Arizona, California, but mainly, and you might be surprised, New Jersey has a dreadful economy the last 10 years, but there's a significant continuing outflow of people from New York City into Jersey and Pennsylvania. Housing costs in Jersey are considerably lower than they are, or at least somewhat lower than they are in downstate suburban New York. There's a flow of people who are recent immigrants or children of recent immigrants, a familiar flow through New York City. You might start out in Brooklyn or Queens, and then your way is, when life gets better, you go to Patterson. There is that move. There is a flow of people who are low income and rising on the economic ladder from New York City to Jersey, and there's a flow of the young investment bankers who marry, start a family, and move to the suburbs, and One of the suburbs they choose to live in, suburban areas, is New Jersey. So there's a flow to New Jersey, there's a flow to Pennsylvania from New York, an increasing flow from the New York City metro area to northwestern Pennsylvania. Anybody know some of those people with those 2-hour commutes from like Allentown in New York City? That's also reflected there. And then the South. The Carolinas, Georgia, Florida. Florida is the biggest destination. Now, carry the data a little further. 2013. Okay. Since 2013 is what I've got here, but the last 3 years of data continue that trend. 2010 to 2013, I was earlier talking about 2000 to 2010. 2010 to 2013, the trend continues. Now, migration everywhere has slowed since the recession, so the numbers are generally low. We are still the worst. In that 3 years, the last 3 years for which there's data, we've lost 328,000 people. As a percentage of our population, it was worse than any state except Illinois. In total terms, in gross nominal terms, it's the biggest loss of any state, bigger even than California, which during this era is not even on the bottom 10 list. And look where people are going. Well, North Dakota, we know that that's a big percentage gain in a small place, and that's oil exploration related. DC, your tax dollars at work. There's a big gentrification effect going on in DC. DC is now intaking people for the first time in a while. And then the other places, again, won't be surprising. Colorado, Florida, South Carolina, those are the gainers of people. This is a real troubling chart. You've heard reference to this, the median age of the population of New York State. Note, in 1990, the state as a whole was slightly older than the nation as a whole, and in 2010, go through the last 2 censuses, we're still slightly older by about the same amount than the nation as a whole. But look at the change. Let me shoot down to upstate. Upstate in 1990 had a median age slightly below the statewide level and closer to the national level. And if you look at the fit, which I'll show you in a minute, in the age distribution year to year, upstate was almost precisely the same as the nation. Upstate was a mini US in terms of age distribution. Go up to 2010. The median age, the whole country has gotten older, but upstate has gotten older faster. You've reached a disturbing magic number in 2010. Upstate's median age in 2010 was 40. Now upstate might try to tell itself that 40 is the new 30. All the mayors in the room can say, but 40 is the new 30. Nonetheless, 40 is not a good number to have as your median age when the median age nationally is 37. New York City got younger. That's immigration, A. B, the city has been phenomenally successful the last 15 years or so in attracting, temporarily, millennials. So you've got 2 things. You've got immigrants and their children, and you've got millennials coming into Manhattan, living 5 to a room and having their first jobs, and then they cycle through, and then they move out when they reach their early 30s and form families. Downstate suburbs also aging. Let me look at these age fits quickly for you. Here's what I meant. Upstate in the US, these lines are year to year, how many people in each age group. New York State, upstate, almost the same as the nation. The main difference was, see that where the upstate line jags above the blue line? That's the college age population. Upstate's got a lot of colleges. The census counts college students where they go to college. It doesn't count them as where mom and dad live. It also counts the prison population, okay? So, prison population tends to be young also. So look, 1990, a year that still feels recent to me, I don't know about you. So upstate is completely, almost precisely matches the national population distribution, except for that jog between 19 and the early 20s. This college kids in prison. Okay? Here's 2010. Look at the black lines upstate. You've got fewer and fewer kids upstate, attention school board members. You've got a lot fewer millennials. You've got a lot fewer lower 20-somethings to 30s. And there's a bigger jag in the college age population. The prison population's been going down. So what is this? This is the college boom, which is now coming to an end, by the way, demographically.